made you want to start this, by the way?
Like cross branding.
Yeah.
It's a little bit I do enjoy the conversations. I'm a big podcast guy. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like All In. There's one called The Looney Hour. Patrick Bet David.
Yeah.
I'll listen to a couple Joe Rogans here and there. Cool, and I just started listening to Modern Wisdom. I forget the guy's name. Great questions. Lex Fridman. There's just a lot of intellectual. It's like philosophy almost. And it's like it just really makes you think.
Yeah, and you get to talk to different people with different point of views, right?
Yeah, different points of views.
It's cool. I've seen it like on LinkedIn and on social media. I've seen some of your clips, like especially the short clips that you post. You know?
Those are the ones that pop.
And they drive traffic.
Yeah.
But dude, honestly, it looks good. You've been doing some good work with that.
Thank you, man. Thank you. We got a good team over here. So, are we rolling?
The real MVP, right?
Yeah,
there.
the real MVP. All right, so let's get into this.
Yeah.
LinkedIn's an odd place.
No, man, I can't stand it, honestly. Like, I just kind of disconnected from it completely. And you know what? Like, sometimes I'll hop on it. First of all, everyone that adds you, I don't know about you, the second you have the title CEO or president, it's a bunch of people trying to sell you. Yeah. That's all it is. Yeah. And it's like, I've seen all the pitches. I'm so tired of it.
Same.
I don't want to buy your shit.
Thing.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to buy it. So it's kind of discouraged me. I don't use it. Now, I met someone before that, like, they really, really network through it, and they've had some decent results. I try to hop on once in a while. I mean, look, this is why we're here right now. Funnily enough, I mean, one comment to your comment.
It's worth, like, that's the thing on LinkedIn. Like, I do, like, the other day too. I'm the exact same way. It's like I wrote a comment, I actually posted it, and then 30 seconds later, I'm like, you know what? Because I do get quite a bit of business from LinkedIn, but I'm not going to virtue signal. I'm not going to do that bullshit. Yeah. I'll still be myself. But one of the comments, it was, so in Ontario, they're making it where you're not allowed to say if you're an immigrant or something. Anyways, it's like, so people are like, finally, immigrants are going to be able to get jobs properly, stuff like that. But it's like, okay, fine, but be careful because the cure might be worse than the disease. You don't want the government telling you who you're supposed to hire and who you're not supposed to hire. Like, that is a slippery motherfucking slope. And Canadians still haven't we don't understand this. I feel like Adam's told me that we're going to see eye to eye on shit like this, but it's like, guys, do you not see where this is going? Like, come on.
Let's be honest. Most Canadians, dude, chumps. Most Canadians.
They are.
And look, the thing with Canadians is this, right? We're respected all around the world. Okay. So again, I've been a bunch of places and people love Canadians, but they ask me like, Canada, it's like this heaven for them, this oasis. They've just heard the taglines, right? And they ask me, so what's a typical Canadian? To be honest, I have a hard time telling them anything. I'm like, look, okay, in Quebec, there's a bit of culture, granted, the French-Canadian thing, right?
You're French-Canadian, I think, right?
Yeah. Pure laine. Technically, French is my mother tongue, but dude, I'm like, I don't speak it that much anymore, to be honest, Kind of lived all over Canada, a little bit in the U.S. as well, so lost most of it. But, I struggle to be able to tell them, what is Canadian culture? Like, what is a Canadian? Like, we're nice, okay, sure. What else? We have maple syrup? Nah, that's Quebec. To be honest, 80% of the world production is Quebec. So it's like, okay, well, maybe we're too much, too open, too docile, we bend over for everything. We have no culture. So it's too bad,
I agree.
It's a shame. But then you go on LinkedIn, right? And it's like, I feel like I have to do that because I'm like, these people are going to judge. You can't just be yourself because half the time you want to comment things. And it's like, this is really what I think. Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same with you. Sometimes you draft something and then you're like, do I really want to post it? And then you kind of censor yourself, right? But then you're not being authentic.
I try not to do that, to be honest. And sometimes, like, I have in the past posted some stuff. I'll comment on certain posts that I don't agree with, and I'll let them know that I don't agree with it. Yeah. And most of the time, actually, it's like people, they'll push back, but I'll just push back again. But there's nothing wrong with having civil discourse, and it's natural for us to disagree, and especially on a platform like LinkedIn. There are definitely pros to LinkedIn, and like we were just discussing earlier, I've gotten business from LinkedIn. I have a brand on LinkedIn. Like, it's good, and I'm also in insurance. Like, I don't want to... I always use this example. It's like... The when they asked Michael Jordan, or back in the 90s, I don't know, some stuff was going on with race, or I don't remember the exact scenario, but they asked him, like, well, are you going to stand up and speak? They're abusing black people. And it was like a Republican Democrat thing. And he didn't comment. And he says, I sell shoes to Democrats and Republicans, which is, from a business standpoint, very smart, because if he makes a comment and he takes a side, well, he's immediately cutting off 50% of the market. So it's like, you got to kind of think the same way too. I would love to be like Elon Musk one day, where he just doesn't give a fuck and says whatever the hell he wants to say whenever he wants to say it. I really admire him for that.
But see, that's a good thing. And you know what? That brings me actually to a whole issue with politicians, right? So this is the problem. They're going to stand to one side during the campaign, right? They're going to polarize and really rile up their base. Then when they win, what happens? They try to unite everyone. So they dilute their message. And I think that's a problem too in business, right? You want to please everyone. And there's a really good book that I love. It's called Rework. It's my favorite business book. Rework. Okay. It's written by the two co-founders of 37 Signals. It's a CRM, right? Now it's called Basecamp, I believe. They rebranded, right? They're actually the first company that Bezos Expeditions ever invested in, right? So Bezos' VC fund.
Yep.
And these guys decided to write a book, and it's a super easy book to read. I mean, it's goo goo gaga stupid. Okay? It's like chapters like.
I like those books.
Oh yeah, me too. Lots of images, man. I can't read. You know, I'm illiterate.
Nice and quick. Yeah.
But you know, in there, that's what he says. It's like people want to please everyone all the time, and the problem is you don't build super fans. What you really want is a super fan, someone who will glorify, speak about, and promote the hell out of your product because they love it so much. And if it means leaving some people to the side because you just don't fit the bill or you're not exactly their cup of tea, so be it. You're going to gain more, right, from milking like a cash cow. It's like a mine, right? You're going to gain more from digging really deeply in a very lucrative or rich mine than you will going surface level in a bunch of mines, right? Because you extend yourself, you need resources to go to mine to mine to mine to mine. So it's the same thing with a lot of clientele. Now, again, school of thoughts, right? That's different people think different things, but I tend to like that. I rather polarize and cater to a very specific segment.
You'd rather take a stance.
Take a stance and have people really, really, really like you. You know, you won't appeal to everyone, but the people you appeal to will love you and spend so much more on your product or support you. You know, if you're a politician, for example, they'll support the hell out of you way more than if you always try to cater for everyone. Because then, look, stand for nothing, you'll fall for everything, right?
So what I got a question for you. What am I supposed to do? So, you know, I have an insurance brokerage, and we're in Montreal. Montreal, especially in the West Island, it's a liberal riding. It's been liberal for, 40 years, 30? It's been a long time.
Forever, man.
Forever. Yeah. So, and I'm not saying I'm pro-liberal or against liberal. I'm not saying that, and I don't like to. I'll never say like what political party I affiliate with. If you listen to all my stuff, I think people could guess, but I'll never actually say it. But
so you vote for Bloc Putt, right? That's what it is. You know, the Rhino Party, is that it?
But like, what am I supposed to do if, let's say, for example, I disagree with something that the Liberal Party is doing, and I think there's a lot of liberals that disagree with the current Liberal Party as well. But what am I supposed to do if I'm in a geographic location where everyone that lives here is liberal? Should I just shut my mouth? Should I say something? Should I, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? It's like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place.
Leave. Get the hell out.
Leave.
You know,
then I have to sell the business. I want to keep the business.
Yeah, that too.
I'd like to keep the business.
Yeah. Can you go practice or open a firm in the US, for example?
I could. There's a lot of hoops that I have to get through, but I looked at it briefly to get into Florida, and if you employ, I think it's 4 or 5 people, last time I checked at least, you kind of skip the line.
Okay.
So if I was to go there with a certain amount of cash, like enough cash where I could hire 4 or 5 people right away. Or there's another where you basically just partner up with an American. Yeah. The only thing is you have to trust that person.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Which that's another big thing. And like in any business, you have to trust them. But I mean, I could do it. That's actually something I would love to do. Go down to Florida. Like,
is it the E2 or the L1A visa you're looking at?
I have no idea.
You have no idea? Because we try to bring BizBiz down to the US, right? Over the last 2 winters, we kind of operated out of the US, right? Rented a house on the beach in Siesta Key, flew down a bunch of our employees. Great time.
I heard Siesta is beautiful.
It's the best place in the US. The best place in the world.
Yeah.
If you ask me right now, paradise, where is it? You can live anywhere in the world. Siesta Key.
Yeah.
Way more. I mean, Miami's fun if you want to party and whatnot. You know what I mean? Like maybe go on a bender on the weekend.
I wouldn't want to live there though.
Heck, fucking no, dude.
I wouldn't want to live there.
But I mean, you know, Tampa's pretty good too. Strumi and I had a good time.
Yeah.
I heard you had a pretty good time too.
Yeah, I did. Tampa's great.
You told me a few stories. Go down to what's it called? Houston, right? The street, Houston, is it? Oh, I know. Soho.
No, Soho's the area. I forget the name of the street, but there's like Bar Howard and all that kind of stuff. I love Tampa. Tampa's a nice place.
But no, going into the US, so we tried. And the issue is there's a lot of, it depends which avenue you take. The E2 is actually, I think, easier. It's about $50,000 to $100,000 invested. You hire a few people, you get an E2. The L1A, which we were recommended to go down, requires certain financial metrics in the US, which we didn't hit. So we weren't
metrics
granted
as in like minimum revenues and stuff like
sales
that?
in the US, yeah. Sales in the US derived by American entities. So we do have 2 American entities under BizBiz. So BizBiz Global is Canada. It's kind of like the main company. Then we have an LLC out of Florida, BizBiz Technologies, and then we have a holdco out of Delaware.
Here, Elliot, before we get into all this, can we back up just a little bit and can you explain to us like what BizBiz does?
Sure. Okay. The inception of BizBiz. I used to live in Alberta. We were talking about Alberta earlier, right? So I was working in the oil fields over there. Again, some controversial thing nowadays, right? Petroleum and whatnot. Yeah. But while I was over there, one day a piece of machinery we're using, a skid steer, broke down. Hydraulic system blew up. It's minus 40, tended to happen. And for, I think, 3 days, the work had to stop. We had to wait for a mechanic to come from Fort Mac all the way up to our work site. We were working, in the boonies, right? And during those 3 days, we did fuck all, man. We were in the truck, driving around, doing nothing, eating cookies. Now, mind you, I love that. It was great, being paid like, good 6-figure salary at the time to do nothing. But I kept thinking, this is inefficient, man. And there's, on the work site, it was about 100 contractors. And one of them had the exact same piece of machinery as us, sitting under a pile of ice and snow, doing nothing. And I thought, why can't we go knock on their door? I thought, okay, so there's the exact same piece of machinery sitting under a pile of ice and snow. Why can't we go knock on our door and temporarily ask to use it, to rent it? I mean, they're not using it. They're not generating revenue from, a capital investment they have. And us, I mean, we're just doing nothing, So when I came back from Alberta at the end of my contract over there, that was around the time the sharing economy was really blowing up, right? Airbnb, Uber, Turo, you name it. It was really kind of scaling up outside of Silicon Valley. And I thought, nothing's being done for businesses. Why not try something? So I looked into it and realized there was absolutely nothing. So we launched BizBiz Share at the time. So we became a B2B asset sharing marketplace. And, the first couple of years we developed our technology in-house. Our MVP was completely done, bootstrapped in Montreal by our own developers and our own co-founders. Eventually we launched, started commercializing around the greater Montreal area. And quickly we garnered 4,000 companies in Montreal using our system. So, hey, now it's time to raise some money. We raised a pre-seed from actually some of our clients invested in us and a couple low angels. Then after that, kept scaling up, raised a seed round from Quebec investors, mostly angel investors, business people, the CEO of a publicly traded company, co-founder of one of Montreal's 10 biggest tech company, these kinds of people, really got a good cap table going. And eventually the pandemic hit. We were scaling up in Chicago at the time, so we were entering the US market. I remember it was February 2020. I went there, meeting a bunch of launch partners, kind of like sealing some deals. And I get back and, the news, what it was. It's like the end of the world, everything's shutting down. So okay, what are we going to do? The traffic on our platform went to 0 overnight, okay? No more revenue. At the time, we had an MRR not far away from 50,000. And we went down to like near 0.
Jeez.
So we started thinking, what can we do? And at that time, we had a few cities that reached out to us and they said, hey, like we heard you guys are the circular economy specialist in Canada. Can we use your technology? Because we're thinking outside of the pandemic, when it's all done, why can't we have our own ecosystem? Our industrial parks, for example, why can't they have their own ecosystem and share their resources between each other, right? Their underused resources, machinery, equipment, heck, office space. So we thought, sure, we never really considered that. And that's when we realized, it kind of dawned on us, the intellectual property we've been investing millions of dollars in, well, that could be the product itself. We were developing it for our use, but why can't we license it? So we decided to go that route, and we became a B2B technology or B2B marketplace technology service provider. A bit went from a Airbnb to a Shopify. Now we just provide the technology. So that's what we do now. So we go to either multinationals with internal business units, cities, municipalities, government instances, and we create white label marketplaces for their ecosystem to transact between each other. To give you an idea, Montreal has one. It was launched 2 years ago. It's called Espace et Compagnie, and it's specifically done for the commercial real estate downtown. So buildings that have commercial real estate that they cannot rent out, they post it on Espace et Compagnie. And that's chapeauté, like led by the Quebec government, Montreal government, and the Montreal Chamber of Commerce as well. We have one in the aerospace industry, several in the industrial manufacturing sector. So that's what we specialize in. We provide technology for groups to share their assets between each other.
And so, but do they have to go like to your platform in order to do this, or you literally just hand them over the piece of software and then they figure it out amongst themselves?
Exactly. So So what
so
we
it's
had,
like a software developer kit almost.
100%, 100%. So we can create a marketplace made to measure from scratch in less than a month. As a matter of fact, it takes us 48 hours. We say a month, but it takes us 48 hours. We're really, really quick with that.
Yeah.
And it can be bespoke.
I'm sure it wasn't 48 hours at the beginning. It's
heck no. At first it was a clusterfuck, if anything.
Yeah.
But BizBiz Share, our initial platform, still operates, but we don't put efforts into it. So there's still companies on it. People still pay to use it. There's still transactions happening on it, but it ain't our main revenue driver anymore. We really focus on just selling licenses. On our end, it's allowed us as well to scale back a little bit on our sales team. Now instead of having, because I used to have guys on the road, we had like this entire sales operation. Inside sales, guys making phone calls. We had guys prospecting data. We had salespeople on the road meeting companies and shaking hands and bringing them like on our BizBiz Share platform. Come on. Then we'd send in what we called at the time our BizBiz Wiz, kind of like an asset manager. He would go in, take the inventory of the entire place, upload it, make sure the images are nice. We really took a page from Airbnb. What they used to do back in the day is they used to send a photographer to every listing to make sure the quality was there. But that was so capital intensive, so expensive. So yeah, now we just scale back the entire team. Now it's more senior salespeople, more like account executives, if you wish, right? We build relationship. Sales cycle is a little long still, 3 to 6 months. Not too happy, but the ticket now is much higher too, right? So we sell a yearly license fee. We charge also for monthly hosting. And on the back end, we take 4% of every transactions that happen on the platform.
So can you I want to make sure I understand this properly. So can you give me an example of like the last sale you made? You don't have to name the name if you don't want to, but like what's the last sale that you made for your product and how are they using it now?
Yeah. So actually right here. In
the Techno Park?
In Ville Saint-Laurent, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the Chambre de Commerce de Ville Saint-Laurent. So they purchased a license from us. It's not delivered yet, right? So contract's been signed, it's been paid. Now we're in the process of developing it for them.
Got it.
And they're going to launch it. So what it's going to do is going to connect all the manufacturing companies from the Technopack and all the industrial area together. Now the users, so our clients are not the users. Our clients are kind of the group that has all these companies underneath, right?
Got it.
So now the users, the companies
will be the businesses
underneath
of the chambre or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Now we don't take care of onboarding them. We don't take care of any of the operations. We just deliver the technology behind it. We take care of technical support, but anything that has to do with onboarding people, managing it and whatnot, that's them. It's their platform. Now you may be, why would they do that? Well, aside from, giving value to their existence, because a lot of these groups, like it or not, they're looking for added value to be given to their members.
Are useless.
Big time. We're not gonna hide it. A freaking spaghetti dinner once in a while ain't gonna cut it.
A lot of times they're a functionaire and they're completely useless.
Yeah, it's probably why our sales cycle is slow as well. But every time you need a board decision for like a $25,000 item, come on. But anyways, but another thing is they make money from it. So we charge 4%, but they tack on extra charges as well. So when people use it, they make money.
So there's an incentive for them too. And got it.
Or they sell us like memberships as well. So some of them will be like, you know what, you want to join? It's going to be $50 a month, $100 a month, $1,000 a month. That's up to them.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like this would be a pretty easy sales pitch.
It's not a hard pitch. It's just a hard sales cycle, against the decision makers. First of all, I don't know if you've ever had to get the approval of a board, and probably through your career.
I haven't.
No.
I've tried a couple times to get into a board to try and sell. Let me back up. Mm-hmm. If I'm trying to sell insurance to a company that happens to have a board, I've never gotten anywhere.
Yeah.
Because you're not dealing directly with the decision maker. It's with a group of people. Exactly. They don't like change, yada, yada, yada. There's all these types of things. It's a very, very, very difficult
And
pitch.
There's always, and this is universal. I don't know where you are in the world. It doesn't matter. It's universal. There's always that one guy, that one fucking asshole in every board that just wants to disagree with everyone. Yeah. Just to feel valued, Yeah. So everyone's like, you know what? That's good. Give us like the metrics, the performance, whatever, some numbers, right? And we'll approve it. And then this one guy's like, yeah, but I don't think this is good. We need to do more of a due diligence. There's always this one guy who just wants to be heard. All right, cool. But that slows everything down. So yeah, if you can avoid having to sell or to convince a board of anything, by all means, man.
Oh, I definitely prefer it's a lot quicker if you're dealing with one person. If you're going to go deal with a decision maker like a CEO or the president, they make the decision. The sales cycle is going to be.
But you in commercial insurance, right?
Yes.
Do you normally just deal directly with an executive or like a C-level executive, or
it's almost always with the owner?
The owner, right?
But also too, like, we're not dealing with multinational companies. We're not dealing with big publicly traded companies or anything like that. We're small and medium-sized businesses. So the biggest business we would insure probably about like 100 employees.
Okay.
That's like a big business for us. 50 million would be like a pretty big business for us to insure. But even at 50 million, most of the time, you're still dealing with the president.
Yeah.
And chances are that guy was probably the founder, or his father or mother was the founder as well. Like, they're still very hands-on.
How do you find a demographic right now? Do you find that the decision makers are more of the boomer generation? Is it shifting more towards millennials?
It's definitely starting to shift. No, it's definitely shifting. I wouldn't say millennials yet. It's like, what's in between boomers and millennials?
X.
Yeah.
Gen X.
Gen X.
Gen
like,
X, yeah.
I'd say most of the time it's actually Gen X.
Okay.
A couple of millennials as well. I'm 34. How old are you?
32.
Yeah, you're 32. So we're millennials. I love dealing with millennials. Gen X are fine too. I like dealing with them as well. Yeah. Because they kind of like it, because they're only most of the time like 10, 15 years older than you. Yeah. And we're hitting our stride now. 35 people. No, but like when you're...
I feel old, dude.
But you know what I mean? Like when you're 26, 27, trying to work in sales, like people still, they don't really take you seriously yet. You've been in the industry for 2, 3, maybe 4 years. Yeah. You're comfortable, but you're still not mature yet.
Right, yeah.
And like we're in our 30s. I'm turning 35 next month. Hey. So it's like I'm at an age now where these guys take me seriously. I have a business. I have 30 employees. Like they take me seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like, and I'm sure it's the same thing for you. So that helps a lot too. But these guys 10 years ago did not take me seriously.
No, but you got to pay your dues in it.
Of course, yeah.
Did you play hockey too?
I did, yeah.
You did, yeah. So you know what it is. You know, you get into a team, especially around junior hockey. You're 16 years old. You're a rookie. You know what I mean? You got to pay your dues, man. You got to eat shit for a bit.
There's always that one guy on the team that's picking on you or something.
Oh,
it's always like a friendly pick on or something.
Yeah, but it's good. We want to make sure you're up to up to the task.
See what this guy's made of.
Yeah, well, there you go. Right?
I used to have this one guy on my high school hockey team. He would pick on me so much, man. But like it was, sometimes there's like they'll pick on you, and the guy's a bully. Yeah. This guy would pick on me because he liked me. Mm-hmm. But when push came to shove, he was a year older than me. And when push came to shove on the ice, if something happened, he always had my back.
Always.
So it's like, but he's the first guy. It's kind of like older brother, little brother syndrome. Yeah. It's
but
like,
that's
I'm the only guy who can pick on my little brother. No one else is allowed. It's kind of the same thing.
But that's 100% hockey, right? Yes, we're gonna tease those rookies or the young guys, right? But on the ice, it's your brother, man.
Yeah, of course.
Don't fuck with him.
Yeah. Did you play with Strumi?
I played against him. Okay. I played against him. We used to kick his ass all the time. He's not gonna lie. He played for Derrive, if I remember. Like minor, like very, very minor hockey. So he was Derrive. We were Lakeshore. Lakeshore were number one all the time. West Island was pretty good. West Island was pretty good.
West Island,
you were West Island, so you guys were good too.
Yeah.
You guys were good. Yeah. Derrive, I mean, they were good. They were good as well. But we used to kick their butt. But then after that, he went up to like AAA midget, I believe, and then I played against him, I think, in junior A. I was playing for the Gloucester Rangers, and he was for the Brockville Braves. Yep. So we kind of
and then he went to Concordia.
Yeah.
I always say what could have been. He knows this too. Had he taken it more seriously and taken his training regimen more seriously, I mean, he was still a good hockey player. Mm-hmm. He would have been a really good hockey player, I think, if he took his training regimen more seriously when he was younger.
He was good, but the thing is this, man. When you're young, you don't realize it. Yeah. The amount of like opportunities, I don't know about you, but I've definitely squandered just being young and dumb, not realizing it. It's like
I just wanted to party and talk to chicks. That's all 100. I wanted to do. When I was 17, I remember once I was a member at the golf course when I was 16, and when I turned 17, my dad's like, "Okay, so you joining the golf course this year?" I'm like, "Nah." He's like, "Why not?" I go, I just want to party and hang out with girls. He's like, all right, have fun.
You got to do it, man. You got to get it out of your system the first time, or at least when you're young.
Yeah.
But it's like investing. I look today, right? I'm like, fuck. Why didn't I start investing at 18? I'd be like way ahead, But it's something again. You're young.
But at the same time, you're gonna make more money in your business right now than you will like in the stock market. Like if you have $100 grand, $200 grand, $300 grand, for whatever, even like up to $500 grand in the stock market, or you have a business like yourself that pops off. You're going to make way more money in that than...
For sure.
Like in the grand scheme of things, $500 grand is not a lot of money.
It's not. But given the proper horizon it becomes... I mean, look, listen. Yes. Any money invested in the broad market, take the S&P, for example, right, will double every 8 years.
Yeah.
So like that 500,000, that becomes $1.8 million, and then $2 million in 16, and then after that, that's $4 million in 24.
Do you want to hear another stat I heard the other day? Actually, so for that, you're right with the S&P, it's going to double roughly every 8 years. Mm-hmm. The money supply, so basically like the value of your money is going to lose. You're going to lose it by double every 12 to 13 years. So it's actually the stock market because the printing money and all this kind of stuff and everything. So So if you have $1 million in 13 years, your $1 million is now going to be worth technically $500,000.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I'm reading a book right now. Really, really like it. It's called The Millionaire Next Door. Highly recommend, right? And in there, all the figures are 1995 figures. It's actually the largest study of American wealth ever conducted. And, you know, obviously the first thing I did is I looked, okay, $1995, what is it equal to today, right? So it's more than doubled, right? So if they say like this person's worth $1 million, well, you can consider it's more than $2 million. It's wild, man, you know, and this is why cryptocurrency is a good thing. Love it.
I don't know too much about crypto, but here, Elliot, I want to back up just a little bit. So basically, we talked about the business, how you got started, pre-seed, seed run, not the seed run.
Seed round, yeah.
Seed round, thank you.
Seed round.
And then we were on the topic of COVID and you guys being in Chicago.
Yeah.
Let's go from there.
Well, I mean, so I think I mentioned that we pivoted, right, towards becoming more of a marketplace provider, right? Yes. So during that time as well, we decided to go remote. So we decided, you know, we're going to close the office. We're paying at the time roughly maybe $6,000-$7,000 a month. We're like, you know, it's nice. It was a decent place, about 5,000 square feet. Had a blast. You know, threw a couple parties there, but you know, we decided, screw it, we're gonna go remote. At that time, anyways, we had staff a little bit all over the world. We had guys in Egypt, in the U.S., in Brazil, and as for me, I wanted to start traveling a little bit. So I just said we're gonna work remotely, see how it goes, and it's been the staple now ever since. It's been 3 years we've been doing that.
Got it. And so right now, are most of your clients in Canada or in the U.S.?
Most in Canada.
Mostly in Canada.
Yeah, so we do have a few accounts in the U.S., mostly in Canada still. We're looking at Europe as well a little bit. It's a different ballgame over there, though.
Yeah,
it's just
in what sense?
The way business is done is just different. So first of all, okay.
For the better or for the worse?
Oh, for the worse. For the worse, man. There's nothing that beats the U.S. And honestly, you realize that real quick. So first of all, trying to start a business, and I'm sure you have plenty of experience with that here in Quebec, it's honestly the death valley here. Okay, people are risk averse, like there's no tomorrow. Trying to raise capital in Quebec, the end of the world. I mean, we have from like angel investors, and it was the hardest thing. I think I must have pitched, like, honestly, and if I looked at my calendar, I must have had upwards of 100 meetings with investors just to close one. You know, and the amount of time I was told no. Here's a funny anecdote, right? I remember the first pitch I ever went to. I went to Place CQCD. It's downtown. It's where pretty much like all the VC funds in Quebec are all hosted in the same building. It's kind of funny because you keep going back there. You're like, oh, I'm here again, you know? And I have an issue with VCs, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of their business model and how they operate, but regardless, sometimes you need them, right? So I go there, I meet with them, we do the pitch, and at the end, he's like, okay, so how much are you guys looking to raise? To be honest with you, at the time, I don't quite remember. Let's say it was $1 million, right? So it's like, okay, but what if you get only 750,000?
He asked you that question.
Yeah. He's like, are you going to survive? Like, are you going to make do with it? I'm like, well, yeah, of course, we'll find a way to do something with it. He's like, good. So don't ever tell me you just need $1 million. Give me a range. You need between $750,000 and $1.5 million. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm taking notes, right? It's my first pitch ever. I'm freaking like shaking at the knees at that point, freaking sweating. Get back to the office.
Was he trying to big dog you?
Probably, man. Yeah. Nothing beats, by the way. We pitched an investment banks, an IB in Toronto at one point. We were trying to raise $2 million. Actually, at that stage, I remember it was $2 million out of a valuation, I believe, of 8. And we went to Haywood Capital. And this guy, so I'm there with my entire executive team. I have my chief commercial officer, who, by the way, was a senior vice president at Banque Nationale. It's like a big guy, you know what I mean? Like, he's seen his fair share. I have my CTO with me, got myself. We're sitting at a table. The guy comes in. Must have been like 22 years old, kicks his legs on the table, looks at us like, all right, cool. What do you guys really want? And the whole time it was this ego shit. And we kept looking at him like, dude, you little snot eater, man. Like, don't try to pull that shit on us. Anyways, that was the worst pitch of my life. He railed us so hard, kicked us out of his office. All right, whatever, it happens. But going back to that investor, right? First time I do a pitch, tells me, give me a range of how much you want. Because let's be honest, you'll make do with less, you'll make do with more. Okay, cool. Go back to the office, recraft the pitch. The next week, I have another VC. Go to them. Then he asked me, what's the ask? Oh, I'm looking between, $750 and $1.1 million. And he's like, okay, so you don't know what you need the money for then. It's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, why do you have a range? Why don't you know exactly to the penny why you need the money? I was like, and this is when I realized they don't freaking know what they want. They're all different.
There's no playbook.
Oh, God, there isn't, man.
Yeah, there's no playbook.
And we ended up raising money from a VC, mostly a fund out of Texas, out of Houston, right? Because we tried, so all the investors we have in Quebec are angels. They're individual entrepreneurs, oftentimes with a pretty marked risk appetite, all self-made men, you know what I mean? But the VC funds here, God, scared, man. They're scared. You know, they're not going to take risks. And they admitted themselves. They're like, yeah, we'd rather come at a later date.
But that's what a VC is.
They're supposed to.
A VC is there to take risks.
It's Quebec, man. They want
VCs, like the business model of a VC is for you to invest in 20 companies and one of them's going to hit. Yeah. That's the business model.
That's
right? Like literally the business model.
But what they want is they want a 6-7% return. That's it. And then you cross the border.
Well, which is ridiculous because a 6 or 7% return, just take your fucking money and put in the stock market. I mean, there's no point then. Like, it's the point of a VC is to make more than the risk-free rate of return. If the risk-free rate of return in the market is 6% or 9% or whatever it is, and for those of you listening, that's basically like a bond. So today, I think you can get a bond, a treasury for like 5 or 6%.
Well, depend on the length of it.
Let's call it 6% or something. Yeah. So it's like, well, if that's risk-free at 6%, well, a VC is going to want to make at least triple that.
For sure.
Anyways, but continue. Yeah, go on.
And yeah, so that's why we're poor in Quebec, right? We just don't understand. Let's go spade to spade. You know,
I think there's other reasons too. But anyways, yeah.
Lots of reasons. We're not going to be able to name them all today.
No.
But we went to the US and it's a completely different ball game. Yeah. Over there, these guys, they're willing to make deals.
Like they want to put money to work.
They want to put money to work. They want to take risks. They want to make sure they can count on you. So here's the thing. They'll give you a chance. And that's the one thing an American told me is like, in America, we'll give you a chance.
Yeah.
Don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
You get one chance with us, but we'll take a risk. We'll take a shot on you. Huh. So, and that's what we did. So we closed.
Why do you think they're like that? Do you think it's just because their mentality? Do you think it's their culture? Do you think it's because there's a lot more money in the system? Like they are on paper, obviously a lot richer than us. They can afford to lose more. Why do you think they're more entrepreneurial than Canadians?
It's a culture thing. I mean, if you look at the economy, it's the same thing, right? So Canada, I saw an interesting stat the other day. We produce about, I believe, 20 to 30% less value per hour worked in Canada, right? Than in the US.
Yeah. It wasn't always this bad, but continue. You're right.
But recently it's been like that, right?
It's been terrible. Yeah.
I mean, look, in Canada, what do we like to put our money in?
Real estate.
Freaking real estate.
Which is a non-productive asset.
Exactly.
It doesn't produce anything.
It produces fuck all. Yeah. Right? And don't get me wrong. I own a building too. Like, I love real estate, right?
Yeah.
But I which you, by the way, insure. Thank you very much for that.
Okay. You know? My pleasure.
But it's
KBD Insurance.
It's just a plug, you know. I want a royalty check. But jokes aside, it's a non-productive asset, exactly. Yeah. In the U.S., they're much more likely to invest in capex and machinery in making sure their staff produces. But the thing is this too. There's a risk associated with it. Any business can fail. Real estate is fairly risk-free. Don't get me wrong, ups and downs, right? Depending on the market too. Alberta has more swings than, say, Toronto. But regardless, the U.S. is just a culture thing. These guys, the American dream is a real thing, and they're sold on the American dream. They believe that there is class mobility, which there is. To this day, the U.S. is still the best country in the world to make money. If you come from nothing and you want to make money, the U.S. is still number one.
I think people in the Middle East, certain parts of the Middle East, would debate you on that today. Not 10 years ago, but today, like Dubai, United Arab Emirates. There's a couple places, I'm forgetting the city off the top of my head. But I followed the guys on the All In podcast and Jay Kalikanakis, I can never pronounce his last name. But the guy there, so he was in the Middle East for 12 weeks. He's a VC guy out of Silicon Valley. And he was talking about, he's like, dude, this place here, I think he was in Saudi. Anyways, one of the rich countries in the Middle East. And he's like, this place is popping off. And like there's tons of money, and everyone, to the point you just made a little bit earlier, Europe they have the same issue of bureaucracy and too much regulation as we have here in Canada today. And a lot of the Europeans, because it's pretty close for them to go to Saudi Arabia, they're just flying to Saudi Arabia and they're having their startups there. That's where that's where all the money is.
It makes sense.
Yeah. And they're like, I don't want to deal with all this fucking regulatory bullshit. It's like, if they're there, like Jay was giving an example, and he said sometimes the product, I forgot what the product was, but it was going to take anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 years just to like start the company, bring it to market. Whereas in Saudi Arabia, it was going to be somewhere like 6 months.
Oh, that's amazing. With
more capital available. Well, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Saudi Arabia.
And that's the thing. Money moves, right? There's no border for money. That's what people don't realize, right? Yeah. Like the whole tax the rich, right? Like they're just going to take the money elsewhere. Dude.
Yeah.
Like it's silly. But it's true. The Middle East, a great place. It's really popping.
Yeah. But back to the U.S., you were saying it's like I would agree with with you that with that statement. It's the best place in the world if you want to make money. I would agree with you there.
Especially if you want to start from low, from the bottom. There's good class mobility still over there, right? Now, don't get me wrong. The U.S. has plenty of problems too.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
It's not a perfect country, but their economy is still the biggest in the world, right? And people are hustlers over there. So if you're willing to hustle and to really like take some risk, there's a good chance you'll make it. No guarantees, but still. So we raised money from VCs over there in the U.S. and it was, night and day, the difference. Easier. It was straight to the point. No, like for example, one thing that makes me laugh is forecasts. Okay, between you and I, especially, look, we're a startup, like it or not, right? Yeah. I'll jerk off a fucking forecast on me.
No,
you know what I mean?
I don't budget.
I can budget next year. That's fine. No problem. I'll budget next year. But giving you a 3 or 5 year, God forbid, 3 years already, but a 5 year forecast, dude, I don't even know what's going to happen in 6 months. And this is me being brutally honest, right? The amount of times with BizBiz, we were on our last dime. Okay. I'm like, shit, I got enough cash on hand for 30 days. This has happened more than once. All right. Our employees don't know that. But yeah, this has happened more than once. We've always found a way forward. And that's fine, especially during like the growth phase, the early stage, right? But, I have an investor here saying, okay, how are you going to spend money in 3 years? I don't know. Dude, we're going to have probably to pivot 3 times, right? Do we have product market fit to begin with? That's another big question. Anyway, so the US, they understand that. There's like, here's capital, right? Tell us why you think it's going to work. And over there, they'll tell you too. They invest on the entrepreneur way more than a business model.
I was just about to ask you that question, but go ahead.
It's on
They're investing in you.
The team, yeah, the team, big time. So they'll grill you way more. They'll really dive into your life and like, why you? Why do you think you can make it? Who are you? What are you made of? And then they'll invest on that, because the reality is this:
they want to make sure you're not like a little bitch.
Well, it's a bit like, it goes back to the hockey thing, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
it's like that, or is this guy just going to take our money, go party in Mexico and spend their money? Like guys have done that too.
It's crazy, but you could. And I had this thought not the other day, but a few years ago, right? So we had just closed around. Look at a bank account. There's a lot of money in there. And I'm like, what's stopping me from like taking all this and just like buying again Bitcoin, or like going to going to a casino with it, or like taking a trip. Yep. It's really, they write you a check in blank and they trust that you'll do the right thing. Now there's oversight, don't get me wrong. Lots of meetings, and they put someone on the board. There's reporting I have to do to them, or for them. But I mean, the reality is ultimately I have planetary power to disperse the money as I see fit. And you're right. If you put the money in the wrong guy's hands, they'll blow it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mark Cuban was saying that on Shark Tank, one of his Shark Tank investments, it was a pretty small investment for his standards. I think it was like $700K or something. And he was watching the guy. So he'd always see him on Instagram. He'd be in like Mexico, he'd be in Dubai, he'd be in Florida, and he was always partying, and he had bottles all around him and all that stuff. And so, he called him. He's like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" He's like, "It's business development." It wasn't business development, and the money was all gone in like 6 months.
Of course.
Yeah, she basically stole the money from Mark Cuban. And there's not really that much you can do about it. So it's like, they're all business expenses.
Exactly.
The product could sell in those locations.
It's not like he embezzled the funds. He just improperly spent them in a reckless manner, but it's not embezzlement. If he took the money and bought himself a freaking house, that's another story. Different. You know what I mean?
But you can do a lot of business expenses with funds like that. So.
Yeah, man, you can be creative, real creative. If you want. And if you have the right accountant too, smooth.
Sky's the limit.
Oh yeah. By the way, who's your accountant?
We have a pretty reputable. They don't fuck around. We're with EY.
Yeah, no, seriously. And that's the thing. I was actually on the phone with our accountant on the way here, because we're applying, it's our first year applying for CDA, it's Crédit de Développement de Commerce Électronique. And God, man, it's like accountants most of the time, you've clearly dealt with him, but if they've never dealt with it, they're not like entrepreneurs. They're not like business people.
They're risk averse.
They're risk averse, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like you, for example, you realize not everything is black and white. Not everything is a number on a spreadsheet, right? Correct. But them, it is.
Yes.
If 1 + 1 = 2, it's fine. If it doesn't, in business, like 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2, man. Yeah. Sometimes it's just going to make it.
They also don't want to be liable, though. Like, I kind of get it's like the same thing as a lawyer, too. Like, if you ask a lawyer, like, hey, do you think I should do this? If it's a gray area, they're always going to err on the side of caution, of course, because they're a lawyer.
Well, it depends as well. If it's an audit and they stamp it, yes, of course.
Yes.
But like for us, for example, it's just like filing CDA, right? The worst that happens, the government comes back, says, okay, you weren't entitled to as much as we gave you, right? Or like, oh, you misfiled something. Fine, pay it back and or amend it.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, if it's an audit, I get it,
Yeah.
or like notaries. Notaries are liable for their work. You know,
Yes.
for example, they don't do the title search properly, right? They sell you like a title that ain't clean or ain't free. They're liable for that big time. Lawyers, it's a bit different though, because it's a guarantee of trying, right? They can't guarantee the result. They represent you in court. They'll try their best, but they can't be like, hey, we'll get you off scot-free. I wish.
Yeah, like there's this one time for one of my buddies. He's a little bit older, and he asked his lawyer the question. He's like, he had a bunch of money in the U.S. and he wanted to bring it back to Canada, and the lawyer's like, there's a tax lawyer, and so he goes, should I bring this back? Because he didn't want to pay the tax. He's going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax to bring back to Canada. He's like, I don't want to pay this fucking tax. And the lawyer goes, well, you'll probably never be audited and you'll probably get away with it. So he goes, well, fuck. Okay, well, what's the downside? He goes, if you do get audited, you'll go to jail. That's tax evasion. So the guy goes, all right. And then the tax lawyer goes, if you're going to cheat bigger than that. Kind of like.
That's what actually, and funnily enough, okay, piggybacking off this point, and it's a good one. Being audacious is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So like, if you're gonna be audacious, like go balls to the walls,
yes.
right? So if you're gonna do that,
don't cheat a little bit, because it's like cheating a little bit or cheating a lot. You're still cheating, so might as well just go big.
Or it reminds me of everything with a bank, right? So like, if you owe $100,000 to the bank, it's your problem. But if you owe $100 million to the bank, it's their problem.
Yeah. I remember seeing that. So here, Elliot, I want to get into, because we were talking about this, and I wrote down a bunch of notes, and I figured this is going to be something that you wanted to kind of talk about today. So far you've explained the difference between Quebec trying to raise money for BizBiz in comparison to raising money for BizBiz in the U.S. So it's a hell of a lot easier to raise money in the U.S. in comparison with Canada. And we talked a little bit, we already touched on this a little bit, about the productivity issue that we have right now in Canada and how it's strangling businesses. And I know everyone's just going to think, it's strangling businesses, you rich fucking businessman, you like pay more tax, you don't pay enough tax and all this kind of stuff. Hold on, give me a second. If there's no businesses, if there's no investment in our country, because we're not making the investments ourselves. So if it's too regulated for foreign investment to come into our country, well, we're not investing ourselves. Foreign investment isn't coming in. What's the next step? Our standard of living drops. And people need to understand that there is no free lunch when it comes to welfare programs or social programs. You got to pay the piper eventually. And people don't seem to understand this. And they just think in their heads, tax the rich. The rich pay enough tax already in the world, in Canada, in comparison to other countries. Like, they pay, in my opinion, and I know if you ask someone who doesn't have a lot of money, they're going to not agree with this, but they pay already too much. And the point you made earlier, money moves. So if you tax them into oblivion and they can't work, well, they're just going to fucking leave. So I want to stay on this topic for a little bit. I want to hear your opinion first on, because, and I want to bring this to light for the people. We do have a problem, and at the end I want to try and discuss some potential solutions. This is a problem, the lack of productivity in Canada, and it's going to drop our quality of living. So I'll let you take the stage.
God, that's a loaded question, because man, I could take this a lot of ways. First, I'll start with a quote from Churchill. I think he's the one who said, you cannot tax a society into wealth. You can't, right? And Canadians need to understand that.
Yes.
You cannot tax someone into prosperity. It won't happen. So, other solutions. And by the way, speaking about the tax the rich, and it's a mindset thing, right? I remember when I started business, I was 23 years old. I didn't have a penny. As a matter of fact, I was indebted, all right? Because I went to Alberta, made a shit ton of money. What did I do as a young guy?
Spent it on cars and parties.
Man, I spent it all. And then when the bank account went to zero, the party had to go on, man. So on the credit cards it went, So
you're used to that standard of living.
Oh God, So I remember starting BizBiz, and at first we had no money. I lived off $1,000 for the first year. Then my salary went to $2,000 for the next 2 years.
That was your salary?
My salary, $2,000 a month. Okay.
Sorry,
did I say a year?
A year. I thought. Well, you didn't say.
Okay,
$2,000
a month,
cool.
right? It started with $1,000 a month and went up to $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
I lived off of that, but people don't know that, right? On top of that, so there's the risk factor, right? All the risk came from the initial entrepreneurs who, started the company. Our first employee, I was paying him considerably more than I was making at the time, and it was okay. It was normal. I needed him way more than he needed me, if anything, right? But again, people don't know that. And then you push it even further. I've had to personally guarantee several loans for the businesses, right?
I just had to do the same thing. I just had to make for over $1.5 million a personal loan. So it's like, I know what you're.
There you go, right? So, I mean, and this is a startup.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
Right? And like I said, there's been days where we were 30 days of cash on hand left. I'm like, shit, if we go to zero, that loan now is coming from me.
Yep.
So a lot of people don't realize that if there's success, and it's an if, because it's a survivor bias thing. You see the people that have success. You don't realize that there's 100 more that failed and are broke now because of it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just taxing the rich more is a stupid idea. Now, what can be done? In Canada, that's gonna be hard. But number one is realizing that without investment from other countries, we won't ever be able to start producing more. And we need to produce. It's like any country needs to have an output in life.
You need to make stuff.
You need to make stuff. Look, it's like yourself as an individual. If you don't produce value, you're not going to make money.
Yes.
You know,
and I just want to add to that, but sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
It's like people think that the economy runs 100% on consumption. And it's true, a big part of the economy of GDP is consumption, but that doesn't add anything. Like, you need to make stuff. What was the saying that Elon Musk said on Joe Rogan? He goes, everyone thinks there's just this horn of plenty. It's like, you need to actually make shit for an economy to work. Yeah. But I'll let you take it from there.
But even worse than that, right now, the only reason our GDP number looks good in Canada is through, artificially inflating it through immigration.
Yep.
You look on a per capita basis, we ain't doing too good.
Terrible.
And we're actually slated now. There's economists coming out saying Canada could be one of the, only G7 country whose standards of living are going to drop with time, not go up.
Yes.
And that's scary. Everyone should be scared shitless of that.
No one knows. No one talks about it.
No, but of course not. Right now we're talking about housing crisis. Sure, there is one, right? But there's one, again, tied to what? Where do people put their money?
Real estate.
In real estate. Again, I just bought a property, right? And let me tell you, I approached it as a business because it's an income generating property, right? So looked at the numbers, gross rent multiple, right? Cap rate, cash on cash. It needed to make sense. And I realized it nearly never makes sense here anymore because you have call it unsophisticated investor, right? The small guy who's like, I'm going to go on appreciation only. I'll overpay, but it's going to go up anyways. And, that's a silly way. So we started looking actually at commercial deals, right? We're not talking like commercial real estate per se, but just commercial, like more than 5 units kind of deal, right? So we're looking at a building with 19 units and all of a sudden it's a different ballgame. It's a business. You receive the metrics, you look at the cash flow of the business, you look at the expenses, and your offer is made purely on the financials.
It's on the math, yeah.
It's on the math, right? So you look at gross rent multiples of 7 or 8 compared to here in Montreal and residential, right? Duplex, triplex, quadplex. We're talking 16, 17, 18 gross rent multiple. It's like, wow, what a difference. Now, obviously those deals are bigger deals. You need to be able to provide more of a down payment. Oftentimes, by the way, if you want a loan, it's going to be a 25% down, not even a 20 if you want a commercial mortgage. But still, what a difference. So going back to solution one, Canadians have to realize they have to produce something, right? We have to produce something that the world wants. And this is a shame. I was having a discussion with my brother about that. I honestly strongly believe Canada could be the wealthiest country in the world.
I agree. We have a lot of natural resources. We have a lot of land. We have a lot of water. We have a lot of oil. We have so much stuff here. Yeah. And we refuse to use it. And it's so frustrating, so fucking frustrating, man.
It is because I spent a lot of time in Nordic countries, right? In Scandinavia. Norway is an outlier, right? It was a country that 100 years ago was nothing. They were broke compared to like Sweden and Denmark.
But they have money because they have oil.
They found oil and they decided to exploit it.
People don't realize this.
And
that's why they're rich.
And they're so rich.
Yeah.
They have one of the biggest sovereign wealth fund ever, right? They have a budget surplus. The quality of life over there is insane.
Yeah.
And Norwegians now are freaking rich.
Yeah.
And I look at Canada, natural gas, minerals, lumber, water, right? Electricity, uranium. We produce most uranium in the world almost, right? Then fisheries, livestock, agriculture. Then on top of that, we have IT sectors, financial sectors out of Toronto, a little bit of Montreal. I said petroleum as well, out west. Land, dude, we have so much. We could be so wealthy. Way more land than Norway, way more of a population and a skilled population on top of that. We decide to do nothing with it. Building a pipeline, end of the world. Drilling for shale gas, end of the world. Green, cool, green. But again, where does the money, the green fund, that's another joke, but regardless, Green is not going to save you if you're broke. All right. The planet ain't going to do. It's like, look, if you're rich, you have a lot more money to put towards charity or towards helping people, right? If you have a lot of money, you can use that money and spend it on the projects you like. But Canada, we're out of money, right?
We're completely out of money. And that's one thing too, that so people, and it's happening right now with the carbon tax. People care about the environment until it starts to affect their pockets.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they don't really care about it because they can't heat their house.
Yeah.
So if you ask these people, it's like, okay, well, would you rather, and first of all, the carbon tax hasn't even done anything to reduce CO2 emissions. That's the other biggest joke. It's the biggest, like, oh my God, it's the biggest joke ever by a government going, oh, we need to tax you more in order to fight climate change.
Yeah.
And they haven't done a damn thing.
And fine, you know what? Show me where the money is going to go. How are you going to use the money? Quebec has had a carbon tax now for way longer than Canada, right?
Yes.
And it was supposed to be put in the Fonds Vert, the green fund,
Yep.
right? Which one has never been audited and two has been completely shady. Nobody knows what that money is for. Okay, cool. Tell me how you're going to spend the money, right? What was it? Was it Elon with, I think at one point he was like, I can solve like poverty or world hunger, in a heartbeat. And then the guy was like, no, you can't. Like, yeah, well, look, I'll give you this much money.
Yeah.
Right?
The guy said, I think it was like $5 billion or something like that. He goes, if we took $5 billion from Elon Musk, it would solve world hunger. And Elon Musk clapped back at him on Twitter and said, if you explain and describe like point by point right here on this forum how that's going to obliterate world hunger, I will give you $5 billion right now.
Yeah.
And obviously the guy didn't respond because
Clearly.
it's not that simple.
It's not, yeah.
So.
No, for sure. But, and going back to Canada, what's the solution for economy? Well, first of all, again, we need to start producing more. How do we do that? We have the low-hanging fruit is our natural resources. And it can be done, by the way, in a very sustainable way. And that's the one thing that blew my mind. When I was in Alberta, I had the typical Canadian ideology that oil sands destroy the landscape. And I remember driving through this lush forest, and I was with a bunch of old timers, right? These guys have been doing this forever. And they're like, this used to be an oil sand site. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, this used to be completely like being
barren,
nothing. And we did what we call land reclamation. It's mandatory by law, by the way. Every freaking site has to be land reclaimed. Can you tell there was an oil sand site here? I'm like, not at all. I was like, well, there you go. But the media never talks about that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And now I've seen that with my eyes. I'm like, shit, let's exploit
So
that.
after they're done extracting the oil, they have to replant the trees. The government will make the oil company, I guess, like they have to absolutely on their dime. I would assume.
Yes. And not only that, so oil sands is a little bit different than drilling, right? So all that earth that they move, they have to put it back, and then they have to put the trees back on it, and they have the entire program. And you know what? These companies do have a lot of money. It's still profitable for them,
Yeah.
If we just allowed them, and we took obviously a cut out of it, but to actually exploit our resources properly, and without too many kickbacks left and right to some shady pockets, we'd be fine. But again,
do you know? Here, I have a question for you. You probably know the answer. Do you know which province Alberta sells the most oil to?
So we export oil, but I have no idea, to be honest with you.
It was a trick question. Yeah. Alberta only sells oil to the United States.
There you go. So we export it. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
It's
we
wild,
don't like. There are provinces that it's people think like, well, yeah, we shouldn't be consuming oil in Canada. Well, newsflash, we do. We use oil. Oil's not going anywhere, and it's just going to increase. The demand for oil internationally is just going to keep increasing.
Yeah.
And people think in Canada, like we're only responsible for, I think it's 2% of the CO2 emissions that go into the world. India doesn't care. China doesn't care. Oh, well, sorry, I shouldn't say they don't care. They're doing things to make it more efficient. But at the end of the day, we're going to consume this energy. That's what's going to happen.
And that's a good point. If the biggest culprits of, call it, emission, right, were to come to the table and actually put in place a standard practice that everyone abides to, sure, by all means.
Which they won't
for very obvious reasons.
Yeah.
For them, it's a competition. It's competitive. How can we derive, or how can we suck as much value and wealth away from these countries back to us? Yeah. That also leads me to, without entering conspiracy theory level stuff here, but the whole electric vehicle push, right? Electric vehicles require a lot of rare earth metals, and those rare earth metals come mostly from China. They're the biggest provider of them. If I was the...
Do you know they just found, well, this is what they're claiming in, I want to say South Dakota, somewhere near Nevada, and I forget the area in the U.S., but they found estimated to be $1.5 trillion worth of lithium.
Oh.
Yeah, they found a lot. And the guy was saying which would make them the biggest lithium exporter in the world if there's that much lithium in the ground.
Right. Well, and
this is great news for the U.S.
Big time.
So now, but it's funny because, so here's the other point I was just about to make. The U.S., they're the big kid on the block. China's coming up, but they understand. And even though the media might go green, the powers that be, the people that actually run the country, understand that they need to be self-sufficient they need to be energy independent. They understand this because they have to compete with other countries. And if we're reliant on lithium for batteries or whatever it may be, and China has all the lithium, well, that's not a good thing. Because if China all of a sudden one day goes, oh, we don't want to sell you any lithium, or we don't want to sell you this, we don't want to sell you that, well, the U.S. is fucked. We don't want to sell you any more chips because we're in Taiwan. Well, what's happening right now? The U.S., they're reshoring everything. They're reshoring the chips. They're reshoring like all the mining. They're energy independent when it comes to natural gas, shale, all these types of things. They're doing it under the radar, but everyone kind of knows. Yeah. And they're just kind of presenting it as, look, we need to be energy independent. This is what we need to do. I don't understand why the leadership in Canada isn't doing the same thing. And this narrative of taking this climate change and saying we're all going to die unless you listen to us, and just shoving it down our throat, it's not working. And a lot of people don't agree with it, but don't speak up. And that's a common characteristic for Canadians. We need to speak up more for these types of things, because it's like, look, I'm all for extracting energy in an efficient way and to have the least amount of CO2 emissions that go into the air. I'm all for that. I'm all for green energy. I'm all for investment into solar, hydro. I'm not saying we shouldn't use that stuff. But the reality is, and the reality, it's not always pretty, the reality. The reality is oil isn't going anywhere. We need to have energy consumption. You can't just tax us to oblivion and tell us we're all going to die unless you listen to us. It's not going to work.
That's controversial stuff. Curtis, be careful.
But unfortunately, that kind of is. Dude, we clipped that, put that on Instagram. That's going to you'll get, whoa.
Big time.
Which is a shame.
But you're saying the truth. Everything you said right there, I believe 1,000,000% into it. And the problem is this, and that's maybe another reality. In Canada, we live in la la land. All right? Yeah. We rather be told a pretty lie than the harsh truth. Yeah. That's Canada for you, right? We were talking, what's a typical Canadian? That's a typical Canadian. So look, we're in a world of hurt right now. It won't be easy. Sacrifices are going to have to be made, and people are going to have to suffer a little bit. But if we keep kicking that can down the road, we're in for a blow up. Like, it ain't going to be good, and we're going to be broke, and our quality of life is going to go down. And that's not what you want.
And to add this, but people need to understand, so the socialists or people that are like, well, it's just corporations that want to come in and make a bunch of money, which, of course they want to make money. That's how capitalism works. They don't understand that eventually, like you just said, the money will run out. If there's no more money, we can't have all these social programs anymore. Like, you got to pay for it somehow. And then their answer is just, we'll tax the rich more. They'll be gone by then.
They'll be gone.
They'll be gone because they can't make anything here. They can't be productive in this country. If you scare away the entrepreneurs, they'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now you have a poor country. How do you think there's rich countries and poor countries? Like, you have to have a productive country in order to, if you want to have a social program or a welfare program, you need to tax the private sector. The public sector takes from the private. I know you know this. I'm just talking for people that are listening. So it's like the private sector, the public sector, aka the government, they don't produce anything. Therefore, they need to take. They need to take from the private sector. If there's nothing to take from the private sector, then you can't invest in the public sector.
Just print money, man.
Yeah.
Just print money.
Yeah, just print more money.
Just print money. What you mentioned is super interesting. It also another big awakening I had. I went to Alberta. I was 21 years old, and I get there and I look at my first paycheck, right? Being used to Quebec, right? And I look and I'm like, oh God. First thing I noticed, federal tax higher than provincial tax. I was like, what the hell? Because I was used to a whole, like, provincial taxes way more than federal tax. Yeah. And that's when I realized at the time, because the NDP won at one point and changed everything. But at the time,
we're back to conservative now, though. So.
Yeah. Good. But It used to be, not saying I vote for them, but it used to be a flat 10%. And you know, that's another thing too. We talk a lot, Canadians, we talk a lot about equality, right? Equality between sexes, gender, freaking race, diversity, everything. Oh yeah, you know, very important. What's your score, by the way? What's your DEI score?
I have no idea. Yeah. Someone called me for that once.
No way. Was it BlackRock? Was it was it Larry Fink?
No, it was this lady, and she said, if you get this, I have to pay. It's basically you pay to say you're diverse. And I went.
You got a sticker. You put it. You know, equality.
Yeah, we have a diverse organization, and I don't need a sticker and to pay you. I think it was $10,000 on top of that.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Companies pay for that.
Yeah. Have you ever had the OQLF up your ass?
No.
That happened to us. You know, we had to sign a bit like you. Yours is much bigger, by the way. Yeah. Really cool.
Ours is in French.
Yeah, at least.
KBD Insurance.
Assurance. That's important, right?
Yeah.
Our trademark, BizBiz Share, was the name on our office, right?
Yeah.
And we had the OQLF come in. Says, you know, it's not written in English, in French. I'm like, yeah, but it's a trademark, right? They're like, okay, well then you need a explicatif en français, so like les entreprises BizBiz, or BizBiz Share technologie, whatever.
Yeah,
you guys, anyways, told them fuck off, but yeah, screw that. We don't have an office anymore. Come sue us. Don't please. I have enough lawsuits off my ass now. But jokes aside, we were talking about social programs and the point about the tax rate in Alberta. So it's a flat 10%, right? So we talk about equality, but what about equality of you know, with regards to the job you choose, the education you have, the risks you've taken, the success you may have had? Why is it that some people who've made certain life choices have to pay more for the people who haven't? Imagine I came up to you, and this will get me canceled for errors, but I don't care. So, you know, I got nothing to lose anyways. I'm not special, but yeah. So imagine if I went up to a girl and said, you know, you're going to pay more taxes because you're a woman. Or I went up to an Indian guy and said, you're going to pay more taxes because you're Indian. We'd be up in arms, and rightfully so, by the way. Course, okay, it's horrible. But why do we say you've made some life choices, whether it be study more, take more risks, invest, work hard, whatever. You produce value in society and you've been rewarded. Why do you pay more taxes? And that's why I liked Alberta at the time. It was flat 10%. You make $100,000 a year, that's 10%. You make $10,000 a year, 10%. We all bleed equally and provide what we can equally for society, right? For those social programs. Hey, I can get behind that. But saying that the harder you work or the more risks you take, the more you pay, you get penalized, come on, man. That does not promote, and that's not a good incentive. Another reason why governments don't work. Have you ever heard of the third-party buyer system?
No.
So that's an interesting kind of thought experiment, is that there's three types of buyers in the world, right? And it's one of the reasons why the government and its programs never work. And I mean never work. So let's start with the first-party buyer. So let's say you need a computer, right, for your job. But you're the one who's going to pay for it and you're the one who's going to use it. You're going to be very sensitive to two things: the quality of that computer. You want to make sure it does what you need it to do, and to the price. You're not going to want to get screwed over. You're going to make sure you get the best possible price for what you need. First party buyer, very efficient. There's a second party buyer system. That's like, okay, you need a computer for work, but your employer, your company is going to pay for it, right? So you're still very sensitive to it doing what you need it to.
But not to the price.
But not to the price. You won't negotiate as much. You won't look for that kind of like special deal. You don't care if you overpay a little bit. It's not the end of the world.
Well, it's not your money.
Not your money.
Yeah.
And then you have the third party system, which is what governments are. It's when they don't even use the system and they don't even pay for the system. So they're not sensitive to it working at all or being efficient or doing what it needs to do.
They're sensitive to the point where it will cost them votes.
It's always about votes.
Yeah.
Always going to be about votes. But votes, it's PR, man. I'm sorry, but
the
program cannot work and can be a complete cost overrun. I mean, the amount of like the RAM freaking opens up and doesn't even work, and it's like 3 years delayed and billions of dollars over budget. People are still happy because it's good. It's nice. Yeah. It's, votes.
I feel like it's people like you and me. I'm guilty of this myself. I shit on government too much. And, there's a lot of reason to shit on government. But I think if they were to sit at the table, like I think ultimately there's a guy who's actually going to come on the podcast, I think in 2 or 3 weeks, Jeffrey Kelly. Yeah,
politician, right? Lex St. Louis?
For Liberal Riding. He's a really nice guy. I'm really looking forward to speaking with him.
I bumped into him on Remembrance Day, actually. He was at a ceremony. Okay. When you have him, okay, tell him. He waved at me. He looked at me. He gave me a little wink. I don't think he knew who I was. I was like, hey, dude, the guy. Anyways, I was like.
But the point I was just going to try and make is like a guy like that, he does want to. Well, I'm gonna guess, but a guy like that, I think deep down inside, does want to serve society. I think he does. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a lot of politicians who want to as well. There's obviously politicians who are there for other motives and perhaps want power, this or that, whatever the hell it is. But I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. So I remember once, probably this is when we first started, and I took some data, and it was from the Fraser Institute. And the Fraser Institute, I didn't even know this at the time. I was just trying to find like actual facts and stuff like that. And they made a statement, and they said 88% of all the new jobs created since February 2020 up until the beginning of 2023, 88% are federal, provincial, or municipal jobs, stuff like that. I think it was a little bit exaggerated. And about 3-4 months later, a bank came out, but it was still a really high number. I think it was the National Bank, and he's one of the big Canadian banks, and said it was 55% of all the new jobs created were government jobs, which is still insane.
That's wild.
It's fucking crazy. And I have nothing against government jobs. I have a problem with government jobs.
I do.
But it's like I have a problem with government jobs when they're not adding to productivity, because it's just going to suck resources out from the private sector. So it's like, so here, the data that I took from today from Deloitte, and I think Deloitte's a pretty center. It's not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's not liberal. It's not conservative. It's pretty objective, I would like to think. You'll still have people say, Deloitte's this, Deloitte's that, and those are wrong numbers, because you always have people argue with the facts, but whatever. So here's one of the statements they said. So Canada has a competitiveness challenge. In January 2019, Deloitte published Canada's competitiveness scorecard, in which we studied over 500 metrics to characterize the Canadian economy relative to its peers. Our conclusion was that while Canada has some core advantages, such as a globally competitive workforce and a strong domestic macroeconomic fundamentals, it also faces competitive headwinds on a number of fronts, particularly innovation, we talked about that, taxation, talked about that, regulation, talked about that diminish Canadian competitiveness at home and abroad. So, and it just goes on to say, so here, World Bank, pretty in the middle, pretty objective source, I would like to think. Canada has fallen from 4th position in the world for ease of doing business all the way to 22nd. And this is in 2018. Oh God, it's worse. I wonder what it is today in 2023. It's going to be way worse than that. Regulatory burden. There is abundant evidence that the business community sees Canada's regulatory burden as creating a competitiveness disadvantage. Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah. Canada ranked 63rd in the world. This is one that drives everyone crazy, and it's gotten worse since this data was taken as well. We rank 63rd in the world for obtaining construction permits. It takes 249 days to get a permit for a warehouse. That's the average. Just to put other countries into perspective, the average is 168 days in the U.S. Anyways, I can go on and on and on, and you made this point a little bit earlier as well. So there are huge regulatory barriers to foreign direct investment, to FDI. If a country, so number one, so the capital expenditures, the investments into manufacturing plants, into just stuff that can build other stuff, it's not good at all in Canada. So, well, if we want to make things, we want to invest into the economy. If we're not going to do it ourselves, we have to get foreign direct investment. We have to get outside investors to come in and to invest into the country. If the rules of the game are too complicated for them to come in, they're going to go, forget this, I'm just going to go somewhere else. And so in terms of sector-specific restrictiveness, in 2018, Canada's FDI, there was restrictions in fisheries, you mentioned, manufacturing, you mentioned, oil refinement, chemicals, banking, transportation, media. Forget media. I don't know how you would invest in that. They were all found to be higher than the OECD average. OECD, for the viewers or listeners, it's basically like all the developed nations, more or less. I won't name every nation that's in it, but that's pretty much it. So we can talk about more of the data after, but actually here, this is just the last point I'll say from Deloitte. When all of these issues are taken together, Canada's investment attractiveness is diminished. Investment in Canada must be funded through domestic savings or inflows of foreign capital, and the country is reliant on foreign investment as there is inadequate domestic savings to meet the needs of the economy. So we have a problem on our hands here.
A little one, eh?
And do you have any comments about some of the points? I know it's kind of just reading off a couple data points, but it's pretty obvious that it's become very difficult more difficult than it should be to conduct business here. We have issues of, in many instances, in many industries, you'll have to deal with not only you'll have to deal with 3 levels of government. You'll have to deal with the municipal government. Yeah. You'll have to deal with the provincial government. Mm-hmm. You'll have to deal with the federal government. And in some industries, they all have different rules and they all apply the rules in a different way. Sometimes there's regulations that overlap. Sometimes you have to pay each one of them. I can go on for days about this, but
you're being you're on fire now, you know? You're right, 100% what you're saying.
And it is. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but sorry, I'm not sorry. Sorry,
that's very Canadian, right?
Yeah, it is Canadian. I try not to say sorry because it's stupid.
Sorry.
But I'm talking about this because this has become an issue. Mm-hmm. It's an issue, and I'm not going to be bullied by people who say you're just a rich capitalist entrepreneur who wants to make the most money possible. We don't need deregulation. We need more regulation. Well, Deloitte, the World Bank, OECD, which are pretty freaking objective sources in the world, are saying, look, well, whatever your opinion is, doesn't really matter what your opinion is. These are the facts. Canada, in comparison to other developed nations, is more difficult to invest in. No one wants to come invest here. And if people don't want to come invest here, we're not going to be able to produce things. Our GDP is going to go down. If our GDP goes down, we don't have enough money to fund social programs, to fund welfare, to fund education, to fund hospitals. Not good for the country. And don't come at me with, well, just tax the rich more. Shut the fuck up. You need to understand this.
Competition is good. It goes back to competition. Competition is good. Deregulation is the way to go. You know, people love to travel now, right?
Yep.
And they love to shop for their deals, their plane deals, their low budget ticket. That's only possible thanks to deregulation. They could have gone 40 years back and realized that, guess what? It was a regulated market. You wanted to fly cross country, the price was set by the government and it was steep. Nobody in Canada loves to pay $100 a month for their phone bill, right?
Yeah.
Nobody likes that.
No.
And sure, granted, small population, big territory. Yes,
sure.
there's some issues there.
Sure.
But you also have an oligopoly in place, right? Deregulate it. And there was a point, what was it, Verizon a few years ago that wanted to come to Canada?
The CRTC didn't let them in.
There you go.
Yeah.
Competition is healthy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course, regulatory barriers. Burden destroys Canada's competitiveness.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that, by the way. Take a small business owner, right? Okay, sure, big business, they have departments that take care of everything. But take the heart of the economy, by the way, is the SME. Okay, the small to medium enterprise.
Yes.
It's the guy with 5 employees or 3 guys, working in a shop, welding, raking leaves for all I care, right? It doesn't matter what you do. It's a small guy. Most people don't know that at least a minimum 1 to 2 day a month, this entrepreneur is working for the government. He's filing his GST, QST filings, right? Whether they're monthly or quarterly. He's going to have to file his yearly income tax. The CNASST wants reports as well, right? All these they're like little paper cuts, right? Doing one thing is fine, but imagine 1 day a month. Let's go with 1 day a month, right? It's 12 days a year that you're working for free for the government. Those 12 days, you could have been productive, right? Another thing that blows my mind.
That's what these guys were basically saying.
There you go.
And we're not arguing. I don't think you're arguing for this either. We're not arguing for there should be no regulation. There needs to be a certain amount of regulation.
Yeah,
I agree. But in industries like what you just said, in telecom, more and more in insurance, in grocery food chains, it's become it's an oligopoly. They own the market through banks. They own the market through regulatory capture. You can't even get into the market.
Yeah.
And these companies want that. And people need to understand this. And so when you throw all these new regulations and line after line and just more work for the small guy, the small SME with 5 employees or 10 employees, he doesn't have the budget that McDonald's has, for example, to deal with this. And you're going to put them out of business.
And that's what they try to do. That's a good way to get rid of competition.
Yes.
Huge.
And this is why, so it's like the the data is so clear. The standard of living, people are upset in Canada. People can't afford their mortgages. We're not making nearly as much money per capita as the U.S. is. We're less productive than the U.S. and the average OECD country. There is an issue here. And, I just want people to wake up to it. I want to talk about this to try and fix it, because I'm tired of people just saying, well, it's just the greedy corporation. There are greedy corporations, of course.
There are.
But the problem, and I think we agree on this, a way to solve this is to allow more competition. Let the little guys come in. Let them be free. Let them come in, work, innovate, and add to productivity.
So there's two things that really need to be done. First of all, we all agree crony capitalism, horrible. I'm a huge capitalist, and I think so are you.
I am, yes, yeah.
I hate crony capitalism.
Yes.
Okay, it's corrupted, it's disgusting. It's just as bad as freaking communism in my eyes, right? We don't want that. So there needs to be some government oversight, not against it. As a matter of fact, antitrust laws need to be used a heck of a lot more. There are some companies right now that are just too big. They've, through acquisition, through M&As, have grown to a point of near monopolies. And they've, and then after that, they lobby the government, right, for more regulation to protect themselves from any outsiders. Break them down. Right, the U.S. did that with like Standard Oil back in the day as well. To give you an idea, that's one of the biggest. But still, social media companies, telecom companies, there's so many companies. Break them down. Let competition flourish. Right now, we're like at the end game of mergers, and we're at a point where it's just a big
clusterfuck.
It is a clusterfuck. That's what it is. It's a shit show. A shit show of acquisitions. And the little guy now does not have the competitive landscape anymore to do anything. Yes. And that's bad for the consumer. That's bad for everyone, because again,
it hurts everyone at the end of the day. And the other thing too, like at least in the US, there's pros and cons to banking systems. At least in the US, there are, I think there's 3,000 or 4,000 banks in the US. You can get loans from within reason, but you're much more likely, if you're starting a business, to be able to get a loan from a bank. Here in Canada, you're starting a business.
Good luck.
Forget it.
The BDC may help you, but even then, I mean, we've raised money from the BDC, okay, and we were generating income, and even then, they wanted the freaking cash flow projections and all that stuff, and they were like hesitant, and I'm like, dude, and that's a loan that I've guaranteed myself.
Yeah.
It's like your entire premise as the BDC is to support those small companies, right? It's to invest in Canadian innovation and Canadian entrepreneurship. And even then we don't do that. And you're right, in the US, since there's more banks, there's more competition.
More options, exactly.
Yes. The little credit union may want to, say, screw it, we want to take more risk because we need to, our risk tolerance and our clients' deposit, whatever the hell it is. This is our business model. We take more risk. We want to invest. Again, diversity is not a bad thing, as long as it's a competitive diversity. That's what we want. So it's another big step in Canada to solve the issue. It's a multifaceted problem, obviously, our economy right now. We've had the same government now for a very long time. It's not working. Okay, I'm not promoting any party here, just a different party, because at this point it ain't working. I think they're laughing at us.
The polls are saying that too. I mean, the Liberals are way down in the polls.
They are, but the problem is this too, our voting system, without getting too deep into it, it's one that favors a specific party. First past the post, right, and the way our ridings are divided, it makes it so that even though a party can have a majority, or at least a majority of the votes, they still end up with less seats in Parliament. I mean, we saw, was it I think it was the provincial election, the Quebec Conservative Party, I had more votes than like Parti Québécois and like all these, not Parti Québécois, but like, what was it? It was the NDP or whatever. There was a couple other parties that had more votes, but it ended up with 0 seats.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, just by virtue.
So they had more of the popular vote.
They had more of the popular.
Seats.
0 seats.
I guess, and most of it probably came around from Montreal and probably Quebec City, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah. So, and I think, it's too bad we say democracy is important, and sure, I agree, but there needs to be something to be done. And by the way, that was a liberal.
But there's no perfect system though either.
There isn't.
Because then sometimes if you get a riding, and then what about the guys that live in the boonies with a population of 5,000? It's like what? Because their vote wouldn't count. Yeah. So there's always a trade-off,
There's always, and there's no perfect system, right? Yeah. And that's an interesting thing that the Liberal of Canada, Federal Party, their first election, and not their entire platform, but a big part of their platform was voting reform. They were going to change the voting system to a proportional voting system, but that wouldn't benefit them.
I don't think that will.
That will never happen.
That won't happen in our lifetime. I don't think.
No way.
No. So instead of just sitting here and we're
bitching,
both, we're complaining and all that stuff, and
we're complainers,
and
we're being.
How do we actually though? I've thought a lot about this. How the hell do we actually get change to take place? Like, where would we start?
All right, first and foremost, and this is not pretty, but cut the public sector. 25% in Quebec, at least, 25% of the workforce or taxpayers are employed directly by the public sector or at arm's length of the public sector. Okay, direct or indirect, 25. Once again, your biggest employer cannot be the government, because how does government pay for these employees? Through taxation. It becomes a vicious cycle, all right? Probably shouldn't say this, but I had the chance to meet at the time with the chief of staff of the Minister of Transport of Quebec. At the time, Ministre Bonardel. I met him in Quebec City. That guy, his last name I won't say for his own protection, I guess. Meeting him, I met him with our CTO, and it was about proposing a project, a marketplace for the Ministry of Transport to manage all of their chantier de construction, all their infrastructure, their infrastructure projects, right? Yeah. Because they have hundreds of contractors, and we're like, there's a lot of inefficiencies there. So we'll develop a marketplace, or platform, call it what you want, that allows all the contractors to put up their excess inventory and their surplus resources, so that other contractors can use it, so that the work site is more efficient. And the guy at the time listened to our pitch, and he said, "That's a wonderful idea. I love it. It will never happen." And I was like, okay, thanks. Why? He's like, I come from the private sector. I was brought on because my good friend is the Minister of Transport. And when he got elected, he said, I want you to come in and help me shake up the ministry. We're going to do stuff together. I'm not a public servant, never wanted to work in the public sector, but now I joined because I wanted to make a change. It's like, do you know how many people work for the Ministry of Transport? And I'm like, no idea. Don't quote me on a number, but he said like 6,500. Out of those 6,500, how many are political positions, meaning voted in? Like, I don't know, it's like 20. He's like, nothing's going to change. He was almost talking a bit, without saying the deep state, but like an establishment of sorts, right? That no matter which government's in place, ain't going to move.
That's not going to...
They don't have an incentive for things to move. Their jobs are guaranteed, unionized and whatnot. And that's another story too. Don't get me started about unions. I think they served a great purpose 100 years ago because, yes, the worker was being completely...
Well, they were being slapped around, yeah.
They were being used. Yeah. But today they've grown into this monstrosity, right? It's disgusting. But anyways, and when he told me this, he was pretty much telling me, yeah, it's corrupted. And this guy... he was so done with it. And as a matter of fact, he ended up leaving not too long afterwards. And he realized, I can't make a difference. So that's going to be very hard in Canada and in Quebec to make a difference. But first, slash public sector, okay? Not because I don't...
What if you just did this, though?
Yeah.
Instead of just... Because I thought about that, too. And just the reality is, like, if you were to slash it, but no politicians are going to do that because they won't get...
Suicide. It's suicide.
It's political suicide.
Yes.
It's going to take a long time. I think we got like a 10-year road ahead of us to actually get back 10-year plus.
A whole generation.
If we really want to get back to... It's a whole generation thing. Being a productive country, and I'm not convinced we will. To be honest, I'm not convinced. I hope I'm wrong. I think one way to do it would be to, you can't slash jobs. Well, you can, but you just won't get reelected. It's political suicide, like you said. Just don't replace all the people that are retiring. There's a lot of baby boomers that are getting out. Like, just stop hiring. Hiring freeze, just stop. We have enough public servants. Yeah. Let's just stop. Let's see where we're at in a year, and then over like a 10-year bleed.
Yeah, that's a great solution, honestly, and that's like a very well-reasoned, balanced solution. You're not affecting anyone's jobs today.
Yes,
but you're.
And I'm not trying to shit on like public servants. There are public. I gotta be careful. We have an office in Ottawa, and it's just like. There are people. There is a purpose to the government. I'm not saying 100%. We no government jobs. I'm not saying that.
We're not anarchists here.
No,
that's not what we want.
But it's currently very. The public sector will never run as efficiently as the private sector. That's just a fact. But it's really bad now. It's gone like to the opposite extreme, and something needs to be done before our standard of living really starts to drop. And it's going to.
It is.
And it already is. It already is. And it's going to continue on this path. So we need to do something. And something needs to be done.
ASAP on top of that. So I think that your first recommendation is an amazing one. And I think that will really start helping a lot on the expenditure side of things, but also about the inefficiencies. When you have too many people, it's like it's a bystander effect as well, right? Just in case they don't know, the more people you have around an issue, the less likely people are to tackle that issue, right? If someone's on the ground having a heart attack and there's 20 other people, you're going to look and wait for someone else to do something, right? Whereas if you're alone with that person, you're more likely to get involved.
Interesting.
So
makes sense.
And this is why, by the way, if something bad ever happens to you, you need help, single someone out. You help me.
Oh yeah.
Because if you just say help, the bystander effect kicks in, especially if there's a lot of people around you.
Sense.
But then number 2, look, we have the low-hanging fruits of our natural resources. Let's start exploiting them with a roadmap and a plan to eventually phase it out. Because, okay, we want green, whatever, sure. Let's use that initially to rebuild the country. And we do have a lot. And it can be done, by the way, in a sustainable way. But even then, it could be, we give it a 50 or 60-year kind of roadmap. And then, obviously, we invest heavily with the gains of that into more information technology. Our banking system is not, our banking sector is not a bad one.
No
way. We have decent.
It's not broken. Like
it's not.
I wish there's more competition, but it is what it is. It works.
Yeah.
Like it's
or maybe give more charter or Schedule 1 charters to more banks. Because right now I think there's just 6, the big 6.
I think with Desjardins and a couple other.
Yeah, but that's a credit union.
True. 6, yes.
There's like
6,
5, 6, maybe 7, right?
Yeah.
Again, there's a few like Schedule 2, 3, 4 banks that could be given a Schedule 1 to give more competition, you know, if they want. I don't know how it works. I'm not an expert on the banking system, to be honest. Yeah. But all right, so then we exploit our natural resources. Water is huge. Electricity, that's another thing too, electricity, right? I mean, Quebec sells its electricity considerably more to the less to the US than they do in Quebec, right? You may say, it's to be competitive. Even if we sell it the same that we sell to our own residents, it's still considerably cheaper than the electricity produced in the US. So there's that too. There's a lot of, and people don't like to say this about Canada. It's controversial. There's corruption, man. There's corruption.
Yeah.
And
there's corruption in any country.
There's corruption in every country.
You can't get rid of corruption. Yeah.
Yes and no. Sure, look, men will be men, right? Humans will be human. In French, you say, oui, qu'il y a de l'homme, il y a de l'hommerie. There's always going to be issues and people are corruptible, right? Power corrupts all, sure. But, Canada promised this. We put a blindfold. We're like, we're Canada, we're developed. Of course, there's no corruption. Are you freaking kidding? There is. So we have to at least try to tackle it a little bit as well. Why? Because all these inefficiencies happen as well due to that corruption. So now we're at 3 steps. Cut down the public sector over time.
Just stop hiring.
Hiring freeze.
Yeah.
Invest in what we already have, our natural resources, in state of the art, all right, with perfect land reclamation if it's oil sand, with investing in using that money to maybe invest in renewables, whatever. Invest in other sectors of the economy. That's number 2. Number 3, we got to tackle corruption. We just have to, right? So already there, that's a good thing. Number 4, it's maybe education as well. Education is everything in life, and right now we're being told. Again, people like to invest in real estate. Sure, it's a good asset class, but it's not the be all end all. People are being told, go to university. It's the best thing you can do with your life, right? There's a lot of trades out there that are quite important. They pay big time.
I see where you're going with this, yeah.
And that's a huge thing.
Trades education,
huge. Take, I saw that stats as well. The average age of a construction worker now is well into the 40s, if not the 50s, when a few years ago it was in the 30s.
How do you get an RBQ permit?
God, I don't know, dude. Who do you have? Who do you have to pay?
I know. Who do you have to pay? You got to pay someone. Yeah. I know in Ontario, because we insure tradespeople in Ontario, the process is a lot. You don't need like a specific permit. Here, if you're doing, for example, if you're a general contractor, you absolutely need that RBQ license. You don't have the license, they'll hunt you down and they'll kill you. No, but there's severe consequences. But
regulation too, and you bring a point that it dawned upon me.
But it's owned by that's not going to change because it's owned by the unions and they have a lot of power and a lot of money and they have a lot of influence and votes.
So that's what it goes back to the corruption. I'm sorry to say, but that's to me corruption.
I
but
agree.
Take the RBQ, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know again the number exactly, but how many job types called the métier in French is there in Quebec?
30,
exactly.
40,
it's huge.
Yeah,
and someone, for example, right, an electrician cannot, and I mean cannot, touch anything to do with anything else.
Nothing.
So the second, let's say, I don't know, there's just plaster that needs to be freaking put on a wall. Can't.
Yeah.
I need to get someone for that. Yeah. You look at Ontario, not too far away, right? I think there's 6 or 8 titles. So people can touch several things. They're qualified to do so.
Yeah.
And already there, less inefficiency.
Yeah.
Right. So again, that's regulation. That's regulatory BS.
Yep.
That just complicates everything. And that would probably help the housing crisis as well down the line. But yeah.
Yeah, because the cost to build a house, it's absolutely ridiculous how much it costs to build a house.
Insane. I mean, you would know, right? You insure property.
Well, people don't know this. Like for about 1/3, 34% of building a new unit of housing today is in taxes. The general contractor has to pay the tax, and they're just going to pass it on to the person who's buying it.
It's insane.
And the same thing, by the way, goes for rent. So if you, like, for example, my girlfriend lives in Lachine. It's a new building. The company is Reliance. They just built it. Beautiful building. Good job. I have no idea how much it cost them, but I do know that it's 33% of their cost to build that is going to be in tax. They need to make a profit on this project. Mm-hmm. So let's just say it's $100 million. So they spent $33 million on taxes. Well, guess who's going to pay that? The tenants who are going there, it's a 100% rental. The tenants are 33% of their rent is being paid in tax.
Yeah.
That's tax. It's an indirect tax.
100%.
People don't like,
they don't get that.
So people go tax more. It's like, buddy, you're getting fucking taxed through the yin yang too. Yeah. People go, what do you mean?
Well, it's the same with companies, right? Tax companies more. Corporate tax, it's going to go down to you.
It just gets passed on to the consumer.
It gets passed down always.
Yes.
Always. They control the price.
Yes.
And guess what? I mean, all entrepreneurs are going to do the exact same thing. What happens?
You got to make a profit.
You have to.
We don't have a business unless we have a profit.
There you go. You know, it's
not
a charity. Life is not a charity. Life again is competitive. Like it or not, look, you can say, let's go back to how it was 1,000 years ago. You still have to get up in the morning and go hunt your food and build your shelter, right?
Yeah.
If you don't do something,
animals trying to kill you.
There you go.
Whatever.
Right.
Yeah, there's always something.
You have to do something to survive. Period.
Life is one guy said this to me once, and at its rawest form, right? Life is a competition for scarce resources. That's like the hunter-gatherer days. That's what it is. We don't have to hunt for our food anymore, but we're still competing for influence. We're still competing for a lot of
resources. Resources and power.
Yeah. I totally agree with that statement.
Big time. Who said that? I
don't know who said that.
Wise man.
Yeah.
Wise man.
Elliot, I think this is a good place to leave it.
All right.
Elliot, I really appreciate your time today. So once again, Elliot, BizBiz Share. Yeah. Any last plugs you want to put for your business?
And that's the thing, right? We're B2B, so I'm not going to market to consumers. But honestly, if you are a group or an organization and you want to improve the efficiency of your assets, go to bizbizshare.com. Simple as that.
I'm Curtis Killen. This is the Freemium Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, bud.
Thanks a lot, Taha.